to help feed hungry people during the COVID pandemic, to help keep people in their homes who were at risk of homelessness. So first of all, if there is fraud there, that should be fully investigated, no matter where it is, whether it's in a Democratic-led state, a Republican-led state. I mean, let's pull back. So absolutely, it should be investigated. The question is, why is this a priority in a different kind of way? The politicization of the DOJ and the FBI is undeniable. So whether they are reliable narrators is the big question. And this is what happens when you weaponize and politicize federal agencies that are not meant to be, politicized. And I think the American people are right to ask the question, well, can we trust you? And that's a sad thing to say as an American. Let's recall, too, that there's also other scandals in other states. For example, the Mississippi welfare scandal. And this is not unique to politics. Americans know that. But of course, the other factor here is that because it looks like the Somali population in Minnesota, the Somali immigrant population may have been involved in some way, those people are being scapegoated. That community is being scapegoated in a way that certainly serves the far right. Sure. So
Okay. Is okay. So, Intergalactic Wrangler, thank you for letting me know that the audio wasn't coming through. The question now is, how long has this been happening? I don't know. Oh, geez. Okay. So, thank you, and that's why I love the chat. Okay. And that is why I don't like rushing into live streams without testing things properly. Well, thank you for letting me know that the audio hasn't been on all this while. I don't know how much you heard, okay, of my commentary, but essentially the TDSBC has been pushing this narrative that that the crime in Minnesota is made up. Okay, so so thanks Intergalactic Wrangler for letting me know you can hear me. Can you tell me if my audio has been off this whole time? Okay, just let me know so I know how much of a recap to give. I don't know what happened with the audio. It seemed like it was working and suddenly it cut out, or it's been off all this time. Now, if you're watching, let me know where you're watching from, and let me know what you think of this take by MSNBC. They want us to believe that the FBI is manufacturing crimes. Okay, that Nick Shirley's videos of him walking through buildings with rows and rows of healthcare providers, which happen to be run by Somalis, is okay. You just got here. All right, so let's just pretend like we're just starting. Okay. So they want us to believe that all of the crime that we're seeing, all the reports that we're getting are essentially made up by the FBI. They are accusing the Trump administration of manufacturing crimes and targeting Somali-owned businesses. Now, if this was true, we wouldn't see all these videos out there of Somalis running fraudulent businesses. Now, here is a local station. Now, the reporting by Nick Shirley blew everything out of proportion, blew it out in the open. People found out. But in January of this year, a local station in Minnesota covered the story. And you know what? It was buried because they didn't want any of us to know about it. Now, here's the reporting, and these are based on eyewitnesses, okay, covering this story and telling us about the fraud happening in the state of Minnesota. And you know what? This was before President Trump took office. So they can't, with a straight face, tell us that this is all about targeting Somalians. Let's watch this.
Governor Tim Walz and state lawmakers recently pledged to crack down on fraud in state government programs after scandals questioned their oversight.
We got complaints about the Child Care Assistance Program and took a closer look at some of the daycare centers receiving millions of your taxpayer dollars. And we found reports of violations state investigators called a threat to the safety of children at centers that continued to receive those federal dollars.
Jay Cole spent months looking into these issues, and he joins us now with what he's found in a story you're seeing first on 5. Jay.
Yeah, Lindsay, CCAP is a $34 million state program that receives federal funding. It benefits more than 12,000 low-income families each month across the entire state. Learning of growing concerns about the program from sources at the Capitol, I started looking into some of the daycares receiving the most money. Despite many serious safety violations over multiple years, they continue to receive funding. And now some state lawmakers want an investigation into what they call a lack of oversight of the CCAP program. I started by visiting Quality Learning Center Daycare.
So it is that 14B.
Which sits right in the heart of downtown Minneapolis. Between 2019 and 2023, the Minnesota Department of Human Services found 95 violations at this location. They range from failure to keep hazardous items away from children to no records for 16 children, which include things like...
Okay, so this report was released in January. This is something that was broadcast before Trump took office, I think. And we're seeing violations that go as far back as 2019. When those jokers on MSNBC, claim that this is all about targeting the Somali population, and you have all of these reports that date all the way back to 2019, okay, and I'm sure that it goes even further back before that, before people took notice of what was going on. It shows the hypocrisy and the dishonesty and the criminal negligence of the leadership in Minnesota.
Immunizations, emergency contacts, and medical needs. So state investigators placed Quality Learning Center on a conditional license in 2022. I went to the daycare's location several times, and only once did I see people there.
Oh, that's your daycare.
But I did.
All right. Now, this is what Nick Shirley reported. He reported the exact same thing, but in his own case, he went to more than one daycare and documented how at every single one, there were no kids, and no one was willing to tell him anything. Now, let's see how they react to this investigative journalist.
Did not see any children.
So there are 80 kids in there?
No.
After school? Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you.
DHS declined an interview, but in a statement acknowledged Quality Learning Center was put on a conditional license because of its poor safety record. But it still received nearly $8 million in taxpayers' money.
So with all of these valuations, they keep receiving all this money. And why is that? It's been reported that every time there's an attempt to cut back on funding from these institutions or these companies, let me call them what they are, companies, they are threatened with cries of racism, that the reason why they are cutting down their funds and penalizing them is because of racism. That's what's out there, guys.
Since 2019, its conditional status removed in 2024. I also went to yet another facility, the Minnesota Child Care Center in this South Minneapolis building. I found it at the end of this small hallway with a steel door, no windows, and no visible security cameras.
That's the sign for the place.
State record.
So guys, does that look like a daycare? That looks like a storage facility. So that's supposed to be a daycare. We're supposed to believe those clowns that the FBI is manufacturing these crimes. This report was released in January before Trump took office, before Trump's FBI director and so on were confirmed. So everything they say, you know it and I know it. All that they're just lies. They're deflecting, and they're hoping that if they scream racism or political targeting loud enough, that the Trump administration will slow down. Now, I want to say that I am disappointed in the Trump FBI because it appears to have taken this reporting by Nick Shirley to have begun some movement from the FBI. If we have some time, we're going to look at a news report that essentially says that the FBI began to make serious moves after Nick Shirley's video went viral, which for me is insane. This report has been out there for years. How come this isn't front and center? Now, let me know in the chat. Do you think the Trump DOJ and FBI may have tunnel vision because essentially they're still investigating the Epstein situation? They're investigating the 2020 elections. They're investigating the weaponization of the DOJ against President Trump and his supporters. They're investigating January 6th. They're investigating so much the Russia collusion hoax that they may have let the ball drop on this one. Let me know in the chat if that may have happened, because that to me appears to be what's going on here, because they're so focused on these other things that blatant, flagrant fraud that's happening in these blue cities in situations like these, the daycares and healthcare fraud are being essentially not being focused on. Okay, so let me know in the chat if I'm, correct in assuming that.
Records show between 2021 and 2023, the daycare had 36 violations, some of them serious. They failed to request initial background checks on 6 staff in 2023 and failed to request repeat background checks on 8 staff in 2024. Ultimately, the state would accept corrective documentation on these violations.
Wasn't anybody here last time either.
I visited several times, and each time, no apparent sign of any workers.
That looks like a sweatshop and not a daycare. Okay.
Each time, no apparent sign of any children.
I think there's anybody there.
Since 2018, Minnesota Child Care Center, however, received $11.5 million in CCAP money.
And that is that location he just visited that looks like a sweatshop. Okay, that's meant to be a daycare, and it received $11 million in 1 year. Okay, so let's keep going. So this afternoon, we saw one of the so-called daycare owners. I'm not sure if it's true that person was a daycare owner, but the labeling said that was a daycare owner, claiming that Nick Shirley was a pedo trying to look at children. Why is he asking where the children are? They always devolve into name-calling, accusations, and conflations to shame you into silence. Will you agree okay, to be silenced simply because some people are claiming now that that this isn't a real issue, it's political, and the FBI is essentially being used or weaponized against a community. That's what they're saying, guys. So let me know in the chat what you think.
I asked DHS why daycare centers could still receive millions of dollars with questionable safety records over multiple years. In a statement, DHS said under state law, they can only stop payment, quote, when a provider intentionally gives false information or submits false attendance records. A provider is operating after a suspension or revocation of its license, there's a credible allegation of fraud, and or a provider refuses access to attendance records.
What does that say to you?
It says that the oversight is incredibly lacking.
I shared our findings with House Speaker designate Lisa Damon.
Are we keeping kids in Minnesota safe? And what you're showing me here brings that very much into question. You know, Jay, you have pages here that are publicly available with repeated failure to keep hazardous items away from children, failure to maintain adequate staff to child ratios, background checks, failing to keep personnel files. These are repeated violations.
As I was looking into the daycare center violations, I also found a connection between CCAP and the Feeding Our Future scam, which bilked $250 million from the state. In 2023, a man named Abdikadir Kadaya was charged with stealing $1 million in taxpayer money in the Feeding Our Future case. He's waiting to be sentenced after pleading guilty to wire fraud. But we also learned Kadaya also operated Intisar Child Care Center in Minneapolis. The facility received $1.8 million in taxpayer funds between 2017 and 21. But the license was revoked at Kadaya's daycare was shut down. He has not been named or charged with any crimes connected to CCAP, however. Now, I've been asking for weeks why Kadaya's license was revoked. Late tonight, DHS sent over this 86-page document explaining why. Some of the more serious reasons include violations directly related to the health and safety of children and providing false and misleading information to DHS. DHS also told me they have 62 active CCAP investigations for family child care and child care centers. And as far as the 2 daycare centers in our story are concerned, I reached out by phone to the names and numbers listed as the licensed operators, and I've not yet heard back.
So this again, look, I need to keep repeating this because as it you know, this doesn't seem to be going away. We started talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and it's simply growing and getting bigger and bigger, and went viral with Nick Shirley's reporting. And shout out to Nick Shirley; he's doing such a great job. And pray for him because, like I said this afternoon, he's becoming popular, and maybe like Tim Pool, he may not be able to do these investigative pieces that he does by going out and essentially inserting himself in those situations. So let me know in the chat what you think. Intergalactic Wrangler, again, thank you for catching the audio snafu that we had earlier. I appreciate it. He says this type of crime will definitely increase. I think that's what you're trying to say. Will definitely increase with AI advancing. Yeah. Now, whenever you have advances in technology, the people who want to create value for customers will use the technology to help their customers. Criminal-minded people will use technology for criminal purposes. And so, yes, it will definitely get more sophisticated, and we're going to be seeing, more crimes that are, hidden with, AI, and basically we're going to be covering stories of that sort in the future. Now, if you're watching for the first time, please consider subscribing to the channel. Like this video, share this video, invite your friends, to join the channel. And when you subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified when fresh stories are published or when we go live. We go live at noon Eastern every day and at 8 p.m. Eastern every day. Today, I am flying solo. Usually, I'm online with Patricia, but Patricia isn't feeling well, and pray for her. Keep her in your prayers so that she recovers quickly and we can have her back on the air. We miss her, and I think she's watching. So, Patricia, we miss you, and we hope to see you soon. Okay. Now, let's be straight with what we're watching here. We saw TDSBC trying to gaslight us, and that's what they're going to be doing. They're going to try to persuade us that dealing with illegal immigration is racist. Dealing with crime in blue cities is racist. Now, catching fraudulent businesses in blue cities that receive taxpayer money to provide daycare services or healthcare services, and them not doing it, but rather stealing the money, buying expensive houses, buying expensive cars, going on exorbitant trips on the taxpayer dime, catching those criminals is racist. We saw in one of the videos that I published today that Nick Shirley went to investigate at one of these businesses, and they literally called the police on Nick Shirley. The criminals are calling the cops on the good guys now. Okay, like, it's insanity, but that's what we're seeing. And now MSNBC wants us to believe, based on their reporting, that all of this is fake. It doesn't exist. But this news station that we just watched, they live in Minnesota. They covered it. They actually live there, not like the jokers on TDSBC who sit in New York and try to tell everyone else, everywhere else in the world, what's going on. These are people who actually live in Minnesota. All right. They found these receipts all the way back in January, and they presented this, and Nick Shirley simply brought it back up, to the open, or made it go nationwide or worldwide. So let me know your thoughts on this issue. Now, Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz have a part to play in this insanity. We've been talking about the unholy alliance of Ilhan Omar, Tim Walz, and Tim Walz's AG for weeks now. All right. And now here's this report from Newsmax about this.
Let's turn to him, because he was running the state the entire time this fraud scheme was going on. When government stops enforcing the law, criminals don't hide. They just cash the checks.
Yeah, well, but that's what blue cities have been trying to do. Blue cities have essentially decided to create a resort for criminals. Now, imagine what's going on in Minnesota. In Minnesota, people traveled from other states to come in to participate in fraud. Essentially, now it's fraud tourism. They literally fly into Minnesota to engage in fraud tourism. This is the joker who was meant to be the vice president of the United States. Okay, this is the person that they were trying to reward for doing such a horrible job in his own state, and upgrade him to become the vice president of the country. Okay, that is crazy.
Now, let's be clear. America also dodged a bullet when Tim Walz's good friend Kamala Harris didn't end up in the Oval Office.
We dodged a nuclear bomb. That's what we dodged.
Because if she were overseeing this, you can believe this disaster, there would be zero accountability. We just have a bunch of lectures. There'd probably be some weird accent from Kamala, and she'd be certainly wagging her finger at the American taxpayer, and They would be told, we're the problem for asking, where did the money go?
Yep.
And now let's talk about Ilhan Omar for a bit too, because this fraud, it doesn't happen without her worldview. Ilhan Omar spent years attacking ICE, attacking law enforcement, attacking any type of enforcement, and certainly attacking accountability. Under her ideology, oversight is considered oppression. Enforcement is considered racism.
Yep.
And taxpayers are supposed to just shut up and send the money. Now, she helped create an environment where auditors were considered the enemy and fraudsters were protected.
Yep.
In fact, when this scandal blew up, did Ilhan Omar demand investigations? No, she didn't. What she demanded was your silence. She demanded solidarity. And worse, she got on national TV and she lectured Americans how Somalians in her state, they're the victims.
Yep. Yeah, I think this is the video.
You know, folks, I thank God for my one.
Oh, no. No, they didn't get to play it. So sorry about that. We watched that video weeks ago, and it was insane to see someone like her attempt to lecture the Americans about about essentially accepting that crime was happening. And there was a video we played where she essentially claimed that white men were the problem. Intergalactic Wrangler, let's just take a look at the chat. Intergalactic Wrangler says MSNBC Comedy Hour. It's Comedy Hour. Okay, so right now all we're going to start doing is pointing and laughing. Okay, we're just going to point and laugh and just move on, because these people, I don't think we should take them seriously. Okay, not now. When I say don't take them seriously, we will definitely take them seriously, because the things that they're doing are destructive to the United States. Okay, they lie, they gaslight, they essentially run cover for criminals, illegal aliens, and deviants. That's what the left-wing media does. Okay, but let's not take them seriously in the sense that let's not let it get us so wound up that our blood pressure goes through the roof. Okay, so I like Intergalactic Wrangler's take on that. Okay, just laugh at them and then call them clowns and move on. Intergalactic Wrangler says guilt written all over Walz's face. Now, my question, okay, I get the comment, but many times I feel like these people have no sense of guilt. It's either they have no sense of guilt, or they've so suppressed that sense of guilt that it no longer bothers them that they are clearly committing crimes and everybody knows it. You know, so sometimes I wonder how they do it, how they stand in front of the American people, how they stand in front of the world and lie without feeling anything. I can't even tell a lie as a joke, like trying to play a prank on my wife or my kids. I struggle to do anything that is a lie, even though it's for a laugh or something. I can't do it. So when these people tell these serious lies that actually are damaging to people, it is very difficult for me to understand how they can do that. Okay? Very difficult for me to do that. Now, this entire situation that we're watching, okay, with all the connections with Tim Walz and everything else that we're watching, has receipts. We've seen how Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar have intimidated people into silence and kept them from stepping forward to call out these crimes. Now, let me ask you, do you think the person who wants to cover up the crimes that are blatant and essentially that are obvious to everyone are essentially the good guys? Okay, do you think they are the good guys? Let me know in the chat. Do you think they're the good guys? Because I don't. Okay, if someone is essentially protecting the criminals, I don't think they're the good guys. All right. Now, John Fetterman, we're going to play this interview, okay, by John Fetterman. Okay, Intergalactic Wrangler says, most of them do not have God or a moral compass that works. They broke their moral compass a long time ago. They did. Excuse me. They did. You know, I want to have, compassion. I want to love them. I can love somebody but not accept their insanity. I want to love them, okay, and say, look, these people are people that God himself loves. Yeah, God loves them. And God commands us to love them too. But God doesn't command us to accept the insanity and the crime. Okay, we're supposed to call out the insanity. We're supposed to call out the crime. But their moral compasses have been broken a long time ago. And they want us to accept their deviancy. They want us to accept their worldview. And they will call us racist or bigots or misogynists, if we do not go along with their insanity. Now let's watch this interview by John Fetterman where he calls out his own party.
Never going to change my party, but clearly we've lost the argument, and right now I think it's entirely appropriate to really be honest and just figure out why exactly have we effectively lost 2 out of the last 3 cycles, and a lot of the things we've really kind of really lost our connection with American voters in ways. And I think we can't just be, well, Trump is always wrong, or that we're going to set the country on fire or whatever. That's just not true either, of course. But, you know, when I represent a state like Pennsylvania, that keeps you honest. And you always can't forget that a lot of Americans happen to disagree with you. That does not mean that they are fascists or now they want to shred the Constitution.
But when you hear some Democrats saying Trump is acting like an autocrat.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. If you actually compare him to an actual autocrat, that is not just that. Now, last night, for example, people were complaining. They were protesting about, oh, that's the Hitler thing. You just don't ever compare anyone to Hitler and those kinds of extreme things. And now look what happened to Charlie Kirk. I mean, you know, the man was shot. Now we have to turn the temperature down. It's like we can't compare people to these kinds of figures in history.
I'm glad that John Fetterman is referring to the Democrat Party because that is the honest thing to do. After Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I thought to myself, surely the Democrats are going to stop this insanity. I was hoping that they would come to their senses and say, look, guys, I think we've gone too far. But they doubled down. They put the likes of Jasmine Crockett and Ilhan Omar out there to say a bunch of rubbish. Okay, essentially breaking the knob and saying we don't care, we're going to turn this temperature all the way up and blame the Republicans for it. And that's what they've been doing. And I'm glad that John Fetterman is calling it out.
History. And this is not an autocrat. This is a product of a democratic election.
So you don't think that Trump is at all shattering any of the norms of democracy in any way?
I'm saying he's definitely different, but that's what America voted for. Again, I don't agree with many of these things, but that does not make him an autocratic.
But one of the things that I hear from Democrats a lot saying a reason why voters may not like Democrats is because they don't fight hard enough. Democrats should be fighting harder. What do you say to folks who say that?
What exactly is
what
fighting?
Exactly is that?
What is fighting?
Yeah.
You know, delay more votes. Or just vote every no on everything, or saying, well, if they're doing X, well, then that means it's wrong, that kind of a thing. It's like, what exactly is fighting?
I'll give you an example. It could be shutting the government down. Like some Democrats say, if this happens, it'll be Trump's fault.
That's not fighting. That's mutilating our nation. If you vote to shut our government down, you are going to harm millions of Americans.
Yep.
And why would you do this? Where's our leverage? It was wrong. It was wrong for the Republicans to do that. Absolutely, that's true. It was wrong for the Republicans to do that. It would just be wrong for us for those things.
Bigger picture, has your party shifted or have you shifted ideologically?
My party is acting in a way they have forgotten. They have forgotten one of the reasons why we lost in 2024. Some of the most extreme things were weaponized against that, and people think now we have to double down on those things, or we must become more progressive or more extreme. That's absolutely not true. The 7 or 8 states that are going to determine who's going to be our next president, you know, we have to win in those states, and I understand what that takes. And a lot of these ideas that are now putting back and being reintroduced are not going to carry, you know, Pennsylvania.
You're talking about what's happening in New York. Zoran Mamdani, Democratic Socialist. He is the Democratic nominee. And polls do say that he is ahead by a significant margin in that race. I mean, is this where your party is headed? And is it a wake-up call to Democrats like yourself?
I don't believe that. New York City is not reflective of our national political things. Certainly the states are going to determine who's going to be the next president. So I don't take any kinds of lessons or anything from that election.
Trump is threatening to send the National Guard into a number of these blue cities, blue states. We're seeing Democratic mayors in Chicago and in Baltimore resist federal help, additional federal help. Is that a good idea to fight Trump on this?
No, what I'll say is, like, I experienced that, it's like I live in Navy Yard. I would walk to work and I would see a lot of National Guard people. It honestly wasn't a big deal. They were friendly. They were standing around. And this wasn't like the Russian army people. This was, it's our sons, our daughters, our fathers, our mothers.
Look, I don't know. This is my picture. Hold on. My kids are acting out. Hold on. Okay, so James. To go to bed. Okay, so go with Marcus.
No, so it's gonna give me a this long time life.
I am sorry. Okay. Since we moved the live stream earlier, we have these episodes where my youngest doesn't want to be put to bed by my oldest. And then they have this thing where they run around and he runs in here. So maybe I'll start locking my door unless you guys want to keep seeing his face. Okay. So this is the kind of common sense that I miss coming from the Democrat Party, or I wish the Democrat Party would have. All right. Now, going back historically, now I look back at history in many ways with rose-tinted glasses. And I look back at the Democrat Party of JFK. I look back at the Democrat Party of what I perceived, to be the common sense policies that they would, try to debate. And I miss that. Okay, but looking back historically, they were actually pushing the envelope progressively over the last 50 to 60 years. So we understand that now in hindsight. But I miss this common sense conversation where law and order is okay. Okay, we shouldn't be demonizing the sitting president because he's enforcing border policies that Democrats voted on and put into the books. We shouldn't be demonizing the president for sending in the National Guard when the cities, blue cities, have been overrun with crime, violent crime. Why is it such a fringe idea that if there's crime in cities like Minnesota, where daycares are set up as money laundering outfits and they're being called out, that whoever calls out these crimes is a racist? Okay, I miss those times. All right, so I don't know. Let me know in the chat if I'm misreading this whole thing. But it appears that the best thing for John Fetterman to do might be to defect to the Republican Party, because the Democrat Party, as it stands right now, is going to essentially end his career and keep him from returning to the Senate. At least that's what they're planning. Well, let me know your thoughts in the chat if I'm correct in reading this situation properly.
Kind of a thing. If you actually experience it on the ground, it's really not like it's not occupied city or anything. So for me, when I was a mayor, as a small town mayor, I asked for help. I asked for help to confront gun violence and crime. If I was a mayor and I had a significant kinds of violence situation, I would be happy to get help. honestly, for that.
Should they
I've done that. I've done that.
And do you think they should too? Like Chicago, Baltimore, and the like, they should accept it.
All I'm saying that it's like when 600 are killed in Chicago once every year, roughly, I think it's entirely appropriate.
Are you comfortable with the way these ICE raids have been carried out in some of these cities?
Not entirely, no. I believe we should have a secure border. And I absolutely believe you should round up all of the criminals. And then I do think you should deport those. But I don't think it's really helpful.
Sorry. Okay, so this is the part where the whole touchy-feely Democrat sentiments begin to come in. Law enforcement is never pretty. I don't know what dimension you guys live in. Okay, and I mean people who think that law enforcement should be all warm and cuddly. Okay, you don't give a criminal cookies and cookies and milk, and they suddenly get reformed and tell you they'll never do it again and become model citizens. That doesn't happen. Okay, criminals need a firm hand. Criminals don't want to be caught. Criminals fight back whenever you're trying to enforce the law, because the only way their careers move forward is if law enforcement does nothing, or law enforcement is so neutered that it can't stop crime. So, expressing concerns about how law enforcement, where border laws or immigration laws are enforced by ICE and border patrol, is just is naive and is reckless. Giving immigrants who cross the border illegally the right to remain in the country is essentially rewarding that crime. I'll tell you what. Anyone in the world who sees what the United States does with these immigrants who broke into the country and committed this crime of violating the sovereign borders of the United States and sees that, well, all 20 million of them happen to have been naturalized and given citizenship eventually, guess what's going to start happening? The whole world will make a run for the border. Okay? America would essentially collapse within the next 50 years. Okay, I'm not going to be so dramatic as to claim that it could happen in less time, but it's possible that it could. Okay, but as long as the guardrails of the Constitution continue to hold, then perhaps the United States can limp on for another 50 years if they continue with this insanity. But if things change, change and turn around, then yes, then America has bought more time. Okay, so what they're talking about, the enforcement, the ICE enforcement and the Border Patrol enforcement, these are necessary for a country to run. And talking about how they feel about law enforcement being carried out is all irrelevant. If you want a safe society, law enforcement has to be firm. It has to be swift.
To raid a factory and round up all of them and deport them, I don't think it's appropriate to go to like a slaughterhouse in Nebraska and round them up and deport them.
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat what I've been saying for months. That is the fault of the Democrats. The Democrats refuse to cooperate with ICE in holding or detaining these people who have clearly committed crimes and holding them until they are picked up by ICE and then detained and then deported. They refused. So ICE has to go into these spaces to arrest them. And what do you know? They happen to have other people who have immigration issues working at those locations. So if the employer of that one criminal illegal alien hires that criminal illegal alien, that employer also has also has other criminal illegal aliens that they've hired because they are open to doing stuff like like that. So I don't see how that is not reasonable. So thinking that Democrats can decide not to uphold the law, prevent cooperation with ICE by their local PDs, and then ICE goes out to do the raids themselves in the general population and not run into other people who are undocumented and have to wrestle them down, zip tie them, and ship them off to detainment centers is ludicrous and it's stupid. It's not the real world. They live in a different dimension, like I always say.
Things. That's not true either. I don't think America really supports those things. I think two things must be true: a secure border, round up all the criminals, but we don't and shouldn't target otherwise hardworking migrants that are just effectively making a significant contribution to our economy.
I wonder politically, you talk about what happened and Democrats may not have learned the lessons from the last election. Do you have any issues of crime?
Like the border, for example, the border, those kind of thing. We are living in the backlash of a lot of the things and the mistake that we have made as a party.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you. Are crime and immigration, are you worried that there will be liabilities for Democrats in the midterms next year?
If you are willing to sink, like if 600 homicides a year are okay, or we don't need help. If I was mayor, I'd be like, absolutely, I'd be grateful for help. Just because if Trump is calling for something X, Y, and Z, then that doesn't mean you have to necessarily oppose that. I think I was the only Democrat that supported striking the Iranian nuclear facilities too. I mean, that was entirely appropriate. I think that was the right thing to do. And I really I believe that too.
You think the party has not learned the lessons from last year? That's fair to say, right?
It's not. It hasn't been a year. It hasn't been a year yet, right now, and that's what I'd like to remind people. It's like a lot of those things really cost our election now. I don't think there has been an effective evaluation. I don't have an exact answer, but I'm not going to just spit out things and pretend that I know. That's absolutely right.
One of the issues you found yourself on the opposite sides of your party is on the issue of Israel. Are you comfortable with the way that Netanyahu is waging this war in Gaza right now, including these strikes in Qatar?
I absolutely fully support continue to destroy Hamas for that. And now, of course, the situations in Gaza, it is difficult, but for some people, they choose to blame Israel for that. I blame Hamas, I blame Iran, and I blame that. So for me, that's what, and people aren't speaking the truth that Hamas could send the hostages home and disarm, and then that's the first opportunity that we can all move on, and the Palestinians could finally have an opportunity to live.
All right, so he switched over to Israel, and and whenever you speak the common sense breakdown of the then Israel-Hamas war, Israel-Gaza war, before the peace talks took place, you would be called either pro-Israel or an Israel puppet if you said some of the things that he talked about, which were essentially common sense. Or you would be called anti-Semitic if you took the opposite role. So it's weird how really common sense conversations can go sideways. Okay, now let me know in the chat and in the comments section what you think about his take. All right, we ended the conversation around Minnesota and the connection to Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar with the corruption, with a comment by Intergalactic Wrangler, which essentially points out that they do not have a moral compass that works. And listening to John Fetterman, of course, there are those Democrat leanings in some of his answers, but mostly he's been very common sense about what he believes the United States should be doing, or at least the Democrats should be doing with border enforcement, ICE enforcement, and law enforcement in blue cities. He's talked about crime. He's talked about not attacking people by calling them, the N-word, okay, and so on. And it's been interesting listening to him speak. But you know what? you can still hear the fact that he's a Democrat in the way he answers some of the questions. And I have pushed back on several things that he said, especially around law enforcement, around immigration. Okay. Law enforcement is not meant to be pretty. That's why it's called law enforcement. It's not meant to be pretty. If you don't want to be handled that way, stay away from crime. It's really that simple. People think that they should be with milk and cookies for committing crimes, right? That's a Democrat leftist approach, which essentially tells you that punishing crime is wrong. Like the mayor of Chicago said, it's a mental illness. It's racist to punish crime. Rather, give the criminals milk and cookies and everything will be fine. Okay, it is those retarded takes that have destroyed blue cities all over the United States. You know it and I know it. All right. Now, we're going to be ending the live stream by reading a few comments from the comment section. We have a few comments that came in, and I'd like to go over them with you. I did promise this afternoon that we will be reading a few of the comments today. All right, so the first comment that we're going to be reading, sorry that I will not be showing them up on the screen, so I apologize for that. Let's see. I have a comment on the video that was released today. Intergalactic Wrangler happens to be the one who put out the comment. He says, now this is a video titled Walls Panics, Labels, Fraud, Investigation, White Supremacy. Okay, when you think you've heard it all, you begin to run into these really insane takes by Tim Walz. And Intergalactic Wrangler says, blatant, rampant fraud is obvious. Walz is a socialist, not a Democrat. They are trying to destroy our beloved United States of America and take our money and freedoms. They must be held accountable. And that's common sense. Okay? Now, do you believe that they will be held accountable? Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat if you believe that they will be held accountable. I've lived long enough, okay? I just turned 48. I've lived long enough in the world to see that people with power and connections everywhere in the world have a way of avoiding justice. Okay, they have a way of avoiding justice. I don't like it. It's my observation. Is it right? I don't think so. I think people have to feel like the justice system is equal. Lady, justice has to be seen as being blind. The Bible tells us that you do not twist justice in favor of the poor, and you do not twist justice in favor of the rich. Okay, some people say, well, they're poor, so the justice system is against them. They're already downtrodden, so loosen the justice system. No, you're not supposed to do that. And then for the rich, oh, well, they get away with crimes because either they can afford good representation or they have connections, and then therefore they get off or get away with their crimes. That is also wrong. Any society that goes either way is courting destruction. So I don't support either one of those, and I will call out either of them every single time. The next chat is coming from Kevin. Excuse me. It's coming from Kevin Morris 9325, and he says, in response to this afternoon's live stream, which is titled Tim Walz Calls Journalists Racist to Hide $100 Million Scam. He says, the Somali event may be the end of the Democrat Party. Now, do you think that Kevin is correct? I don't know. Okay, I don't know. We've seen so many times when we've been told, well, this is the end of all of this, and then you turn around and nothing happens. Okay, then then something else happens, and they say, well, this is the end of the Democrat Party, and nothing happens. Okay, Jesus says that the poor you will have with you always. And I would like to include the wicked you will have with you always. There will always be people in the world until the final judgment at the great white throne judgment, where the world stands before God to be judged. That is the only time when evil will be eradicated from the world. Until then, you're going to have to deal with people who collectively hate freedom. They hate conservative or Christian values, and they will do their very best to eradicate those values from the face of the earth. So you're not going to, magically destroy them simply because they have one setback or another. And that is why I always press for constant vigilance. People who vote conservative, Republicans, people who have common sense takes on the world and on politics and on policy have to take their votes seriously. You have to decide that you're going to do what it takes to ensure that common sense people are voted into office. You don't sit back at home when local elections are happening. You don't sit back at home when elections that are not the presidential, elections are happening. You have to get out there and make your vote count. All right. Intergalactic Wrangler posts a comment in the chat and says, money and power may keep justice from being attainable. That is true. And that is why, in the first 5 books of the Bible, there is a call to caution. The nation of Israel was cautioned against allowing money and power to twist justice. Okay. When you have, and there are many people who will disagree, but when you have a governmental system that is devoid of moral clarity, and when I say moral clarity, I mean there is a clear moral through line to a deity that everyone is subject to. In the case of the United States and the founding fathers, from the Christian value system that they came from Europe with, it is God, the God of the Bible. And when you have a people who still have that through line to an eternal being that they all have to give account to at the end of their lives, there is a reverence and there is a care with which they go about their business and with which they carry out laws. But when you have people who want you to believe that there is no God, that there is nothing after, there's no afterlife, that everything is just a hoax, and that you can live anyhow you like with no consequences, and that these laws that have been extracted from the Bible and implemented to great effect in the United States of America, thereby creating the most successful and sophisticated civilization the world has ever seen, that is wrong and that is barbaric and backwards. You know that someone is trying to destroy your nation when they do that. This is the engine of the United States of America. The Christian values that were brought in to North America from Europe that essentially molded and crafted the North American continent into what we see today. So trying to make it appear like, that the Christian ethos is a backward and a barbarian, a barbaric and a destructive system is actually a lie, and we all know it. Okay, so justice has to be fair, meaning the same punishment for the poor has to be the same punishment for the rich. If the rich commits the same crime as the poor, they all get punished the same way. And that's why a lot of us are frustrated with what's going on in Congress, where you have insider trading happening in Congress. and Congress people are making it appear like, well, there's nothing we can do about it. But if somebody who wasn't in Congress engaged in insider trading, we all know what would happen to that person. They would lock them up and throw away the key. So that, in my opinion, is a clear example of money and power twisting justice, because the punishment for office holders who commit these crimes is very different from the punishment that people who are out there on the street get when they commit the same crimes. All right. Now, we have one more comment from the video that went live, that got published this evening. I have two videos that were published today. This is the second video that got published today from Bill WZO. He says, this is just the tip of the iceberg. It is in every state and every government program. Over the years, it's probably $1 trillion worth of fraud. How do you feel about that comment? For me, that comment feels like, we haven't seen, we haven't even seen half of the fraud that's been going on. And B, there's a sense of resignation that this has been going on for a long time. And is it possible that anything could change? All right, so that's the sense that I get in this comment by Bill W70, not zero, but O. Okay, so it's easy for us to feel helpless. There are times when it appears that things will never change. But I want to encourage you. I want you to know that things can change. And the only way things can change is when you change. You have to change. You have to change your perspective on life. You have to change your beliefs. And then you have to lead other people into that change. Not force them, but lead them by having conversations, by letting them know what you think, and by sharing your worldview, okay, with them and persuading them into your worldview. Not everybody is going to want to believe or follow your worldview. And that is a fact. There are people who just like things the way they are. They like the fact that might makes right. And that's what they want to continue living by, as long as they are the ones with the might. Okay, they're great with it. And then when they aren't the ones with the might, they want everyone to believe that they are victims. So you have to believe that change is possible. You have to encourage others to believe that change is possible. You have to unite with others who believe that change is possible. You have to vote in your local elections. You have to get involved in the conversation online. I've said many times that these conversations are important because whenever you see the results that you get whenever you're doing research, especially when you're using AI like Grok or ChatGPT. One of the things that you notice is that if you know where to look, they essentially pull all of their results from the general knowledge on the internet. And that tells me if the general knowledge on the internet is being populated mostly by people who think a certain way, let's say they are left-leaning, it means that on certain topics, the only conclusion that AI will arrive at is conclusions that are left-leaning. And that's the way the internet works. That's the way AI works. And so on the internet, I want to encourage you to consider becoming more vocal, more active, engage in conversations in the chat, create content. Guys, create content. Okay? If you feel like there's an angle that you can speak into, create content in that area. It doesn't have to be full-time and professional, just like I'm trying to do here. It can just be you having fun with your phone and just recording stuff that you want other people to know about or to hear. All right. Or you can simply post your ideas here on this program and we can talk about it during our live streams and really dive into those ideas. We need to make our voices heard. Let's not allow the loud minority run things, because that's what's been going on for the last 60 years. These people are the minority. They are fewer than we are. Those of us who have common sense ideas, the only reason why the world still trudges on is because there are more common sense people generating the wealth that the socialists want to distribute among the poor. That's why things are working. How come countries like the Soviet Union collapsed? Because they didn't have a capitalist, common sense, conservative crowd generating the wealth. They kept eating their own until the entire thing collapsed under its own weight. That's what happened to the Soviet Union. And that could have happened to China before they decided to modify their approach to communism and create a capitalist engine that funds their socialist activities. So there are more than us than there are of them. Be encouraged. Understand that things can change. Continue to do what you're doing. And speaking of continue to do what you're doing, thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for staying and watching the entire show. I'm yet to find out who it is that keeps watching the show from start to finish on the backup channel. I don't know who you are, but thank you. Intergalactic Wrangler, thank you for being a part of the channel since that first live stream that we did on the genocide in Nigeria. I remember when you joined the family, and I tend to remember when people join the family. It's like the birth of a new child for me when somebody significant joins the community. And Intergalactic Wrangler, I remember that was the day you joined, and I am grateful that you were that you joined and you have been a part of the community. The same for Canary Kin, same for Tony, and same for Patricia. Patricia, again, send your prayers. Pray for her. She's under the weather, and we want to trust that she would recover and be back to hosting the show with us soon. Right. I love hanging out with you guys. Intergalactic Wrangler says, stay safe, everyone. Yes. Yes, everyone, stay safe. Hold on. I want to go full screen for this last leg of the live stream. Okay. So Intergalactic Wrangler, thank you. I appreciate you. And then if you're again watching either live or after the fact, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing the video. If you can donate a super thank or a super chat so that we can continue doing what we're doing. A super chat is a chat that, whenever you're chatting while we're live, you can give a donation. The icon is right there in the chat area. If you're watching after the fact and you're commenting, the ability to comment has the ability to donate with a super thank. It helps us out a whole lot. Okay, this is now a full-time operation for me. We live stream twice a day, noon Eastern and at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are fighting against the algorithm, like literally. We're essentially in a war against some of the changes that we're seeing on the platforms. And two things are happening. This is a slow news season. So whenever you have a channel like mine that focuses on news and politics, people pay attention to news and politics during presidential election cycles or during wars or catastrophes. People pay attention to what's going on, and they essentially use these outlets to catch up on the important things. But when nothing like that is happening, we essentially have what you call a slow news cycle. So people aren't exactly paying attention to the news, and views on channels like mine drop and so on. So I'm trying to figure out how to help this channel survive, because a lot of channels that blew up during the elections are doing quite well. Mine essentially didn't go as far as others because of a few things that I've said before, and I'm not going to repeat them. So I want to thank you for supporting the channel with your views, with your comments, with your chats, with showing up during the live streams. It means a whole lot. We're going to be doing more. I'm going to be releasing more standalone videos. I'm going to be going harder. I'm going to be more diligent with what I create here on the channel so that it serves you better. I'll be doing more research to make sure that the facts that I'm putting together are more accurate. I want to be as valuable to you as you're attending and watching the show, and watching the other videos is valuable to me. I want to do my very best to be useful in your journey. So I want to thank you yet again for being a part of this live stream. We're going to be back tomorrow at noon Eastern and at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And I'm going to be, of course, creating more content. So look out for the content. And if you're subscribed, check to make sure that the bell icon is active, and you'll be notified whenever we release new videos. And if you're watching, check to make sure that you're still subscribed. We're seeing that we're having a bunch of unsubscribes. Okay, between the last couple of weeks, we may have lost over 20 subscribers because somehow they are unsubscribed. Now, it may be that there are people who feel like they wanted to unsubscribe, but it appears to just be too convenient that they are happening in quick succession over just a couple of days. So please just make sure that you're still subscribed. Continue to support us with your views. And if you want to, you can send us suggestions to this email address on your screen, crossroadsirl@gmail.com. This helps to let us know what you think about the show, stories that you might want us to cover. And then in the future, as always, we will always be responding to your comments during the live streams. I will also be reading your mail if you send anything in, and I will be responding to you during the show. Thank you for being a part of this show. Thank you. God bless you. And I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye. Welcome to Headlines and History, live news reactions and your views. We're about to go live soon, so grab your spot and get ready for a sharp, balanced take on today's biggest news stories with a dash of historical insight. Stay tuned. Each week, we tackle the headlines that matter: politics, economics, global events with a balanced lens. We'll react live, tie today's stories to historical moments, and spotlight your views in the chat. From trade talks echoing the 1990s to crises recalling 2008, we're here to unpack it all. Your voice drives the show. Share your thoughts or historical parallels in the live chat, and we'll dive into the best ones. It's news, context, and community all in 1 hour. We're moments away from launching Headlines and History. Stick around for live reactions, historical nuggets, and your chance to chime in. Hit the notification bell, prep your comments, and let's make sense of the news together. See you soon.